Today we are opening the show with a short segment looking at the number of the foreign trips that Mr. President has undertaken since he took office last year, May 29, which is actually about 37 trips, compared to the number of the times that the Federal Executive Council has sat, which is about 23 meetings. And the implications of this and the fact that FEC no longer meets weekly. Now, there is no rule or a law that the president cannot change regarding the meeting of FEC. To join me in that discussion, I have somebody that has been reporting the State House for over 3 years, and somebody that has written about this in his column. State House correspondent of The Punch, Mr. Stephen Angbulu. Stephen, you're welcome to Inside Sources.
Thank you so much for having me, Mr. Kondi.
All right. So, what's your first take about this idea of looking at the numbers? The president has spent more time with foreign leaders than his own ministers in cabinet.
First, I would have to say that although the Constitution doesn't necessarily talks about the frequency of the meetings of the Federal Executive Council, it does recognize the council and its functions, but it does not necessarily state how often the council should meet. The Cabinet Affairs Office released an operational manual in December of 2014 under former President Goodluck Jonathan, talking about how frequently the council should meet, and it states clearly that the council should meet weekly. And this is to allow for speedy processing of memoranda, projects, programs of the government, so you don't keep so much backlog waiting. Right. And one of the reasons behind that is for us, of course, to have an efficient government. That's number one. Right. But then under the Buhari administration, Buhari took on that custom.
Or Jonathan.
Yes. I'm speaking for the one I covered Buhari. I didn't cover Jonathan. So we had FEC meetings on Wednesdays, 10 a.m. And that was the tradition at the time. Wednesdays, everybody was aware that 10 a.m. the villa will be full, the council chamber will be full of ministers to deliberate on issues of national concern. Right. Into the new administration, however, we saw a different pattern, right? On the 21st of August 2023, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu inaugurated 45 ministers, and that was on a Monday. Right. A week later, 28th of August 2023, we saw the inaugural meeting of the council, and from that period on, council meetings became on Mondays. And one of the things, one of the announcements, the Minister of Information, Mohammed Idris, told State House correspondents at the time was that FEC meetings will be holding on Mondays.
Oh, you actually said that?
Yes, he said that. And then, of course, he also said that we shouldn't expect the meetings to hold every week. Okay. The council will meet when there are memoranda to discuss. Okay. So that was very clear from the beginning. The administration set our expectations very clear from the beginning that FEC meetings are not going to be holding weekly. So the president has been in office for 77 weeks, and we have 23 FEC meetings so far. So that's not even up to half of the weeks within which he has been president for. 77 weeks already, 23 meetings, but 37 foreign trips.
Yeah, it's not even up to half.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, the 37 foreign trips.
Yes.
Which is my primary concern, that why is the president spending more time with foreign leaders than members of his own cabinet? Now, there's a boss in this town, he's just a boss, I'm not confirming it, we can't confirm it, but it's a boss. That there are certain ministers who have not even seen the president, since they took office. Again, that would be just peculiar to President Tinubu, to be fair. I know that it's peculiar to, previous presidents, but in terms of the outlook of the work that we expect the president to do, is spending more time, to seem, with foreign leaders than with his own cabinet. Now, as somebody that covers the villa, do you see any implication for this, or what's your observation?
Okay, one of the things I realized first about covering presidents is that the presidency is also a heavily ambassadorial role. That is one of the things I noticed. And that means that for a longer time, for the better part of their time, right, presidents would mostly be lending the weight of their office to matters of interest to the nation abroad. There are certain kinds of deals, there are certain kinds of agreements that will not go through if there is nobody at the head of state level to represent the interest of the country. Now, that aside, the usefulness of a trip is determined by two factors. Number one, the goal of that trip, and what is the follow-through of the government to ensure that they achieve the goals of the trip even after the president returns. Right. The second one would be how efficiently is the decision-making in his absence. How efficiently is the country going? Because this is a largely decision-making role, right? How effectively are matters being handled in his absence, right? So that it will not even be as though he was not even around, right? So 37 trips so far, yes, and within the first 17 months of the administration, I think the president and his deputy vice president, Kashim Shettima, spent about 180 days.
Yeah, I think that's what you wrote in your column.
Yes, in one of our stories, yes, in October. Yes. And that's about six months abroad out of 17 months. And also, so far so good. For the president alone, we have 140 days, over 140 days. That's 5 months, over 5 months, because he has been traveling way after that report came out. We're also looking at over 300 flight hours. He has, under his belt within that period. And that just shows you about the extent of what it entails. But now there's the argument that, okay, when you're moving around, local issues should not suffer. There are issues where there are times where the country is going through, a state. Right. Or there's a national mood the country is going through that will require that the president is around. Yeah. So on one or two occasions, we've had that scenario where there have been times where the president is away while things are happening back home, right?
I remember one incident when I don't remember which country it was, and then there was this flood in
Maiduguri.
In Maiduguri.
Yes.
But he did a good thing.
Yes.
He came. He flew, from the foreign trip. I think it was Paris or so. I'm not sure.
Yes, I think
he went straight to Maiduguri.
Yes.
Well, that leads to my next question. If you look, you cover the villa, and you've been doing it for 3 years now. If you look at the number of foreign trips and local trips outside of Abuja, how does that balance out?
Well, the local trips, of course, foreign trips are more in number, right? We have about 18 countries now. Some are recurrent, some are unique. Yes, Tanzania was the first time, but right about now, as we're talking, the president is in Ethiopia, which is, I think, his second or third appearance in that country.
Yeah, but before he got to Ethiopia, he spent about a week in Paris.
In Paris, yes. So I would say that the local trips are mostly on a high needs basis.
And thank you so much, Stephen, for the insight. The reason why I raised that question is that actually my guest last week, who is a member of the party, did say that, look, the president has not been to a place like Kano, it's going to be 2 years. But he's been to Enugu, he's been to
Maiduguri, yes.
Of course, he goes to Lagos very often. I'm trying to remember where else. Now, so the final question is that the president's predilection or propensity to travel abroad, I don't know whether it compares with others. I've not done the mathematics. It probably does, although this seems to be quite another level. Obasanjo traveled a lot.
A whole lot.
Abroad, and I know that President Buhari also did quite a bit. In fact, he took a vacation when, twice when he was not feeling very good. So we're not saying that the president is doing what others have not done. But two issues. He is distracted from local, attending local issues, so there's a drain of his time on local issues. And then I wanted to ask you that, what about the drain on the resources? Does this constitute a significant drain on the resources? And does it constitute a significant drain on his ability to focus on local issues?
Now, I would say that, first off, like you rightly said, presidential trips or presidential movements generally are quite resource intensive. We have to state that fact. For instance, the US president, we know how much, we can estimate how much goes into movements for the US president just within the country and even outside. That is a given. Now, when the president moves, it's like a whole village moving. There's a whole lot of architecture around him, the security, the media, and intelligence and all that, right? So, and that doesn't come cheap. For instance, let me look at the numbers for the 2024 budget. Allocates about I think the 2024 budget allocates around 8 billion for the trips, the foreign trips of the president. Foreign and local, let me put it that way. Foreign and local trips for the president. The vice president has 1.8 billion naira allocated to his office, meaning he'll be traveling way less than the president. For 2025, that number dropped a bit. The State House allocated 7 billion naira to the office of the president, and for the office of the vice president, that figure dropped to about 1.7 billion billion naira.
That's looking good.
But then that's not all of it. You see, that's not all of it, because then sometimes, like I think we did a report in January of 2024 where about 3.5 billion naira had been spent already by the administration 6 months in. And this is way above the budget, because it was an inherited budget in 2023. So this was way above the budget, even allocated for the whole year.
We already spent it in 6 months.
Yes, and in 6 months it had already been overshot. But again, like I said, within the first few months of a president, it is typical to see a hard push to go out there and portray the image of the country on the global stage, and I think that is what happened. Yes.
Interesting. Thank you so much, for coming to Inside Sources. The whole point is to call the attention of the president and his handlers that look, this is how it's looking. You're spending more time, with foreign leaders than you are spending at home. And like we've discussed, there are good reasons for both. But it's important for us to have a clear understanding of what it is that is happening. Ultimately, we need the president more at home than abroad, And good thing we can talk about this. This is a democracy.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Stephen, for coming to Inside Sources.
Thank you very much for having me, Mr. Akonde. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Inside Sources.